Going to start Bible study with John chapter 7 here. Say a quick prayer. God, bless each of us here today. Bless all the people watching us online. Please come and bless us with your presence. Teach us to have a better understanding of the Gospel of John as we dissect it, so we'll be better equipped to spread your love and good news to the world. Amen. John chapter 7. After this, Jesus went out around in Galilee, purposely staying away from Judea, because the Jews there were waiting to take his life. But when the Jewish feast of tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, "You ought to leave here and go to Judea, so that your disciples may see the miracles you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world." For even his own brothers did not believe in him. Therefore Jesus told them, "The right time for me has not yet come. For you, any time is right. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that what it does is evil. You go to the feast. I'm not yet going up to this feast, because for me the right time has not yet come." Having said this, he stayed in Galilee. However, after his brothers had left for the feast, he went also, not publicly, but in secret. Now at the feast, the Jews were watching for him and asking, "Where is that man?" Among the crowds, there was widespread whispering about him. Some said, "He is a good man." Others replied, "No, he deceives the people." But no one would say anything publicly about him for the fear of the Jews. Not until halfway through the feast did Jesus go up to the temple. Here. Sorry about that. All right. Not until halfway through the feast did Jesus go up to the temple courts and begin to teach. The Jews were amazed and asked, "How did this man get such learning without having studied?" Jesus answered, "My teaching is not my own. It comes from him who sent me. If anyone chooses to do God's will, he will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. He who speaks on his own does so to gain honor for himself, but he who works for the honor of the one who sent him is a man of truth. There is nothing false about him. Has not Moses given you the law? Yet not one of you keeps the law. Why are you trying to kill me?" "You are demon-possessed," the crowd answered. "Who is trying to kill you?" Jesus said to them, "I did one miracle, and you are all astonished. Yet, because Moses gave you circumcision, though actually it did not come from Moses, but from the patriarchs, you circumcise a child on the Sabbath. Now, if a child can be circumcised on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing the whole man on the Sabbath? Stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment." At that point, some of the people of Jerusalem began to ask, "Isn't this the man they are trying to kill? Here he is, speaking publicly, and they are not saying a word to him. Have the authorities really concluded that he is the Christ? But we know where this man is from. When the Christ comes, no one will know where he is from." Then Jesus, still teaching in the temple courts, cried out, "Yes, you know me, and you know where I am from. I am not here on my own, but he who sent me is true. You do not know him, but I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." At this, they tried to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him because his time had not come yet. Still, many in the crowd put their faith in him. They said, when the Christ comes, will he do more miraculous signs than this man? The Pharisees heard the crowd whispering such things about him. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees sent temple guards to arrest him. Jesus said, I am with you for only a short time, and then I go to the one who sent me. You will look for me, but you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come. The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we cannot find him? Will he go where our people live, scattered among the Greeks, and teach the Greeks? What did he mean when he said, you will look for me, but you will not find me, and where I am, you cannot come? All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, last week we saw Jesus deliver a really hard word to those who had been following him. It was hard because it was misunderstood. Jesus told them they must eat his flesh and drink his blood in order to have eternal life. They took that literally rather than figuratively. They believed he was talking about eating his body, like you would eat the body of an animal that was sacrificed to God, especially to the ancient foreign gods. Okay? What he was really saying, he was trying to encourage them to abide with him in a relationship, moment by moment, submitting to his direction and his guidance. Now, many of these followers, the literalists, just walked away, but not Peter. He spoke for the 12, saying, where would we go, Lord? You have the words of eternal life. You are the Holy One of Israel. So Jesus had captured the hearts of his hand-picked disciples, even though one will betray him. Now Jesus moves about Galilee. He stays north of Judea because if he heads south, the Jews are going to kill him. And so he lays low for now. Fall has come, and with it another feast, a feast that will last 8 days. There are 7 major feasts in the Jewish calendar, and this is the last feast of the year. It was a joyous harvest festival that required people to build booths of palm trees and branches. These booths could be placed on their rooftops or outside their homes, but they were required to live in them for 8 days. The roofs had to be thatched with just enough space to let the light in during the day and let the stars be seen at night. So it was fun for them. It was kind of like camping. It was a time of giving thanks for the blessings of the agricultural season, and especially for water, as they remembered how God gave them water in the desert. On the 8th day, the priest would get a pitcher of water from the pool of Siloam, and he would pour it on the altar. And the people would walk around the altar 7 times, giving thanks, much like they walked around the walls of Jericho for 7 days as they were entering into the promised land. So there are 7 major feasts, probably a lot more too, but the 7 major ones are the Sabbath, or Shabbat. That's a weekly feast, which starts at sunset on Friday and lasts till sunset on Saturday. It's a day of rest after a long week of work, and that's probably the feast most familiar to all of us. Then there's Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish New Year. It's celebrated in the fall for 2 days. It's a time to repent of past mistakes in the prior year. Then there's Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, where the priest makes atonement for his own sins and for the sins of the whole nation. There is Hanukkah, which is the Festival of Lights, which celebrates the rededication of the Second Temple after the Maccabees won a war against the Seleucids who had come into Israel, captured it, and desecrated the temple. Then there's Purim, which celebrated the saving of the Jews by Queen Esther. She saved them from being slaughtered by her husband, the king of Persia, who had been duped by the evil Haman, who told the king that Jews were disloyal subjects and they were going to overthrow his kingdom. Then we have the Passover, which celebrated the Jews being delivered from the spirit of death that passed over, the angel of death, that passed over their homes but struck the Egyptians as they were beginning their journey into the Exodus. And last but not least was Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, remembering the Exodus from Egypt and how they had to live in tents for 40 years. That is the feast we're talking about today. So during the Feast of the Tabernacles, Jews who lived within 15 miles of Jerusalem were required to attend the feast in the Holy City. But even those who didn't live close, they would go. They loved this feast. So they went to Jerusalem to celebrate. This was considered the most joyous feast of all 7. So it's fall, and the Feast of Tabernacles is here. And Jesus' half-brothers, Mary and Joseph's sons, are heading to Jerusalem, some 60 to 80 miles south from their home in Galilee, to celebrate. And they think that Jesus should go too. They bait him. They try to get him to go to the festival and show off his powers, or he will not get the recognition they think he deserves. It's a sarcastic taunt that they put to him when they say, "Leave here and go down to Jerusalem so your disciples will get a chance to see the works that you do." For no one goes on doing things in secret when he wishes to draw public attention to himself. Since you do these things, just show yourself to the world. And in a sense, they're not wrong. Jesus does want to draw attention to himself. But his reason for that is 180 degrees different from these brothers. They're mocking him. He wants to draw attention to himself in order to point to his Father. Okay? They think he's enamored with himself and his power, but they cannot be further from the truth. So what are some observations that you make when you look at these brothers? You just said they were mocking. Okay. Anything else? They're enamored with their own power? Okay. Jealous. Yeah. Yeah. They're listening to Satan. Yeah. All of those. Yeah, all of those.
They're accusatory.
They're accusatory.
They're accusing him. It's not so much they want him to go show his miracles, but they're just, nobody does anything in secret.
Yeah.
But, they're just very accusatory.
They seem snarky, don't they?
Bad attitude.
Bad attitudes, yeah. They have no idea who Jesus is. And if they can't see him for who he is, no wonder the religious authorities don't recognize him. They've lived with him. As the saying goes, a prophet is not honored in his own home. So these brothers are not godly minded. They see Jesus through an earthly filter. And to me, they sound jealous. Yeah. People have a dark side who are sarcastic and pushy. And that's these guys. They no more think he's the Messiah than the rest of the world.
Did you ever wonder, did Mary not tell her brothers who he was?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
When you consider what they're doing, obviously, she never told them.
They're mistreating her son. Yeah.
Well, they know he's, maybe they don't.
I don't.
They just don't. I don't think they like him.
I don't think so.
He's got a following,
Yeah. And they didn't.
and you do.
Yeah.
When I was working, my boss was Jewish, and I'm not a person that likes to argue, and he argued about everything. Is it day? No, it's not. I mean, just everything. It used to stress me out. And he said, that's just what we do as Jews. We like to argue. That's part of our heritage. Or
Maybe that's why people don't like them. Maybe that's why they're not liked. I don't know. I don't know.
Argue about everything.
My gut reaction is these guys are idiots, But Jesus isn't he isn't moved by their insistence, to go. He replies, it's not my time, but any time is your time. Jesus purposely did not go to Jerusalem. The word used for time here is kairos, which means the most opportune time. Jesus is strategic. He knows when the crowds will be at their the largest, and he also knows people are looking for him. I wonder if Jesus' brothers know that people are out to kill him, because you would never tell a man to go to a place where people are gunning for you. I wonder if they know that. Don't know. So if they were really, really jealous, maybe they knew and they didn't care. I don't know.
My time is not here, and I think that's more of the time of God.
Oh, yeah.
That means that's-
Oh.
Sometimes he might, I think it's too cold. Sometimes, well, it's not time for me to leave yet. The crowds aren't big enough, or the right people
Uh-huh.
are there, or, but not time.
Well, Barclay parses that out. He said the word hora, H-O-R-A, hora, is, that means time as well, or hour. And he said that means God's appointed hour. But he said here, they don't use that. They use kairos, which means an opportunity. What's the greatest opportunity? Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. I also thought it was a God appointment, but that's not what he says, so. And I don't know, is Barclay right? Maybe. He's a famous scholar. We can assume he is. Okay, so Jesus delivers a sharp rebuke. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that what it does is evil. So what does Jesus mean when he says the world cannot hate you? Cannot hate you. What does that mean? Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Okay. Okay.
For the world to hate them, they would have to have sort of
Okay.
the world can't, and so the world can't hate them. The person, they would have to have a bigger purpose than just themselves
Okay.
for the world to hate them.
Okay.
They hadn't gotten to the point where they were really above just themselves.
Okay.
They weren't big enough yet.
They weren't big enough yet.
So they were following tradition.
Okay. Yeah, the world doesn't turn on its own. The world only goes after people who challenge their lives and don't believe like they do. Okay? Corinthians 4:4 says, Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is the exact likeness of God. Okay? So Jesus' brothers head to Jerusalem, and so does Jesus, but after they leave. Okay? And he goes in secret. I'm thinking the 12 disciples have not been notified of his leaving. He doesn't want to be seen or heard just yet. It sounds to me like he goes by himself without his followers. When he arrives in Jerusalem, he hears people whispering that Jesus is a good guy. But he also hears that Jesus is a deceiver, okay? I can almost see him with a hood over his head, slowly moving through the people and taking in the sentiments of the crowd. And then he waits. And when the feast is half over, he shows up in the temple teaching. And people are wowed. Even the religious authorities are wowed, even though they're still out to get him, okay? They just cannot figure out how he could be so smart and authoritative when he has no training. Hearing what they say, Jesus tells them what in verses 16 and 17?
Jesus answered them and said, my teaching is not mine, but his that sent me.
Okay, my teaching's not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. Okay, so rabbis, when they got up and preached or taught, they never spoke on their own authority. Okay, when they taught, they referred back to the prior teacher's authority, like saying Rabbi Hillel says this or Rabbi Joseph says that. But Jesus doesn't give credit to any rabbi. He says it is God himself who gives him the words when he says, I don't speak on my own. I don't seek glory. I seek the glory of the one who sent me. So the words that Jesus shares are his Father's words. Jesus is the conduit. He is the mouthpiece. He is the voice. But the message belongs to his Father. He's not campaigning for himself. He's campaigning for the Father. Okay? No, the authorities absolutely hate him. They had Jesus derangement syndrome. Barclay says, and I quote, there was sheer hatred of the Pharisees and of the chief priests. They did not hate him for the same reason, because in fact, they hated one another. The Pharisees hated him because of their petty rules and regulations. If Jesus was right, they were wrong. And they loved their own little system more than they loved God. The Sadducees were a political party. They did not observe the Pharisaic rules and regulations. Nearly all the priests were Sadducees. They collaborated with the Roman masters, and they had a very comfortable and even luxurious life. They did not want a Messiah, for when he came, their political setup would disintegrate and their comfort would be gone. They hated Jesus because he interfered with their vested interests, which were dearer to them than God. And then he continues, it's still possible for a man to love his own little system more than he loves God, and to place his own interest above the challenge of the adventurous and sacrificial way. End quote. So the people have closed ears, and they refuse to hear what Jesus has to say. They're hung up on the law of Moses, on working their way to heaven by following rules. They think if they keep the law, they can earn their ticket to eternal happiness. But Jesus confronts them, and he says, Moses gave you the law, and you love it, but you don't even keep it. And then he quotes the sixth commandment, which is what? Thou shalt not kill. So why are you trying to kill me, he says. And the short fuses of these authorities have been lit. They are full of ire. Why are you trying to kill me? Them's fighting words. They explode with what in verse 20? Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. You're demon possessed. Who's trying to kill you? And Jesus responds, you circumcise on the Sabbath, so why is it wrong to heal a man on the Sabbath? I guess when the scribes sat down to write their dozens of Sabbath violations, circumcision wasn't one of them, but apparently healing was. You were allowed to bandage a wound on the Sabbath, but you were not allowed to put salve on it, because that would make it better. You were working, so you had to wait until the Sabbath was over. It was the law that a baby boy be circumcised on the 8th day after his birth. So if that 8th day happened to be on the Sabbath, so be it. They could perform the circumcision. But to Jesus, neither circumcision nor healing is work. Jesus is pointing out their hypocrisy. He accuses them of making wrong calls. These are umpires, not empires, umpires with a U, following asinine rules that were written by man, not by God, and they're calling strikes rather than balls. So tension's in the air. There seems to be a standoff between Jesus and the authorities. The authorities have plenty to say, but they're not acting. They're not commanding the temple guards to capture Jesus and jail him. And because of their inaction, people are starting to wonder if just maybe these authorities aren't being swayed by Jesus too. And then troublemakers in the crowd speak out, saying, when Christ arrives, no one will know where he comes from. What they're saying is, you can't be the Christ because we know you come from Nazareth. But the truth is, these people don't know where Jesus comes from, which is heaven. So there's a lot of confusion, and the devil, who is the author of confusion, is walking around whispering into the ears of those who are willing to listen. And if you've ever seen The Passion of the Christ that Mel Gibson put on, they depict this so clearly when they show the devil stealthily moving among the crowds, right at the edge. You know, that's what's happening here. So a lot of voices are saying a lot of things right now, but Jesus has the last word, and the last word speaks loudest. He dares to tell the religious elite what in verses 28 and 29.
Well, you go to, he says, Jesus cried out in the temple, teaching, saying, this is what you're talking about, you both know me and know where I come from, where I am from, and I have not come of myself, but he who sent me is true, whom you do not know.
Yeah, you don't know God, but I know him. More fighting words. Now that prompts action, because I can see the steam coming out of their ears. Their hearts are so filled with rage. They call for the guards to seize him, but the guards can't. It's almost like he has a spiritual iron dome around him. They can't arrest him because it's not his time. Okay, God's plan will not be thwarted. Jesus is under the Father's protective governance. So many people in the crowd believe in him because they cannot imagine that anyone could do greater works than Jesus has done. And they get that right. Okay? But Jesus goes on to tell everyone in earshot, I'm going to be here for a short time, but then I'm leaving. I'm going to the one who sent me. You'll be looking for me, but you won't find me. Where I'm going, you can't come. And they wonder if maybe he's heading to Greece to teach the Jews who lived there. Jesus has become a cattle prod to the unbelievers. His words shock them. They're tormented by his comments, but still many in the crowd believed him. They believe in him. Now, I have a very tangential story. It's very tangential, but it reminds me of today's lesson. My daughter was on a business trip, and she was in a plane, and sitting next to her was this fellow, and they started this conversation. And the fellow started talking. He told her that he had a friend who went to school at Harvard with Prince Frederick of Denmark. It happened to be a literature class that they were taking together. So they were studying the play Hamlet, which is a very intense play about a young man whose uncle kills his dad and marries his mom. Hamlet's dad and marries Hamlet's mom. So at one point the professor said to the class, can you imagine how the Prince of Denmark must have felt? And very shyly, Prince Frederick raises his hand. The professor had no idea who he was. He was just a student. And the point being, sometimes a prince can be standing right in front of you and you don't know who you're looking at. And that's the case of Jesus and these religious authorities. So we'll stop there and pick up next week. Thank you. We're early again.